having an intense discussion with some free ice cream would help to get the juices flowing. But unfortunately, budget constraints meant we had to stick with Parliament. Now, may I first start by thanking everyone involved in putting this. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself, did I? My name is Samuel Kasumi, I'm the Managing Director of Inclusive Boards. So may I first start by thanking everybody involved in making this report a reality. Andre, our lead researcher for this particular report, is at the back. Wave for us, Andre. Andre has done an excellent job in sticking to the facts and making sure the facts are presented in the most accessible way. Elizabeth, who you met earlier, actually designs the report, so if you like the design, it was her. I'm sure you do like the design, don't you? Yes, good, you must. Samuel Steele, who's our Knowledge and Innovation Manager in Nottingham, Ozzy Clark Binzi, who you're going to hear from later, and Shabani Sen for the in-depth interview in the full report. Also the 500 charities that we spoke with, and the Prime Minister's Race Disparity Unit for their insights during the crafting of this report. Can we give all of them a round of applause? Now, we know that in this particular period of time, data is increasingly the benchmark for the burden of proof when advocating for any societal change. Our work at Inclusive Boards does not only focus on charities. We are increasingly developing a footprint in sport, supporting the sector in being compliant with the Code for Sport Governance. We are supporting groundbreaking work within the social investment sector. Later this year, we will be releasing a major piece of work focused on the technology sector. And of course, with Minister Dowden, we are doing some work around public appointments. Now, our view as an organisation is that although there are underlining themes when it comes to delivering on diversity and inclusion, each sector will have its own unique challenges based on a number of variables. For example, in the tech sector, the underlining gender challenges in technical roles requires deep analysis of entry points. In horticulture, we account for regional differences, and in agriculture, we are currently looking at the nuances of family-run businesses. Let us make no mistake in understanding that in this room today, we have individuals at the heart of fighting for good causes and being at the cutting edge of making a difference. This week's events, with the tragic challenges for the Empire Windrush generation, continued reports of anti-Semitism, and the humanitarian crisis in Syria emphasizes the great need for charities, where governments have been slow to respond, and where the media and general public may not have had a cause on their agenda, charities have always been present. Can I get a hear here? Or do you not agree? Or am I in the wrong room? But this sector must also take on the mandate, the mantle of leading by example when it comes to representation at the highest level. As a charity founder and trustee myself, I recognize that we are entrusted with the resources and the hopes of so many, and we cannot afford to feel that only a particular type of person is able to grapple with complex decisions. This report we are launching today gives a snapshot of a particular period of time. For some charities analysed, there may have been some improvements since we recorded our findings, but we are confident that it paints the most accurate picture of the top 500 charities by income in relation to diversity. Well, why did we pick the top 500 charities by income to focus on? Well, it's our belief that even in the most challenging of times, resources are less of an issue for these charities when it comes to recruiting boards and or senior leadership teams. The vast majority of these charities we have analysed have either a dedicated governance team, person, and or established HR functions. Many also already pay for support when recruiting. So the issue for this particular group, unlike many smaller charities, is very unlikely to be money. Secondly, these organisations are more likely to have people that have crossed over from the other sectors and transfer their own practices and biases. For example, a former senior leader of a FTSE 100 or FTSE 250 firm is likely to take on a senior role in a large charity at later stages in their lives. They are then likely to also adopt the same recruitment processes or use the same agencies that they believe served them so well in their earlier careers. They will also, unfortunately, more often than not, feel that only people from a certain background have the competencies to be part of a leadership team. Thirdly, we are focused on the larger charities because they are ambassadors for the sector. If they do anything wrong, the effects can often ripple down. And if they can successfully grapple with this particular subject, the hope is that it would also have a positive effect on the sector. Finally, a board can often be a reflection of an organisation's culture. As these charities are amongst the largest employers in the country, there is a wider imperative for diversity to be on the agenda at every level. While all of this does not ignore the wider challenges within the sector as a whole, which is why we have added primary research for the first time in this year's report, talking to 500 senior leaders. Now, in terms of the methodology for this report, there was a Freedom of Information request made to the Charity Commission. We used this as a base and then analysed websites, Companies House, the Charity Commission again, and those and many other secondary sources to make sure our data was as accurate as possible. We then had a qualitative survey to understand deeper what the challenges were. This was combined with desk research to give the most accurate picture possible. I won't go over all of our findings, but some of the highlights which you would have seen today include 79% of senior leadership teams lack any ethnic minority professional. Nearly 60% of senior leaders are men, whilst women make up 65% of the overall workforce. 62% of the UK's largest charities have all white boards, a 5% increase over the last 18 months, and 66% of trustees from the top 500 charities are men, whilst 34% are female. In regards to the recommendations, the first recommendation was that the publishing of diversity action plans, something the Minister mentioned earlier, should be compulsory or mandatory for some of the largest charities receiving the most public funds. We believe that large charities have a greater duty of care and should at least have a plan in place that the public can see. In terms of the Office for Civil Society, our analysis found very limited information in regards to how they were promoting diversity to the sector. It is of course always better to avoid being overly critical at these points, but it's also important to be honest. So it's our view that the Office for Civil Society must do more in this area. In terms of funders, we believe that it is very difficult in this current climate and sometimes unrealistic and unjustifiable for charities to allocate already scarce resources to tackle diversity. So for us, we feel that funders must recognise that better governance within organisations could result or should result in better outcomes. So a separate resource should be accessible for every organisation that they fund. It should not just look to diversity, but should be a general fund for helping charities to improve their overall governance and hopefully help to improve on current trust levels. In terms of agencies, we of course are one of many agencies in the sector. We should all be challenged to do our best to have the most diverse possible long list and short list. And to be fair, many of our counterparts are fully aware of this and have focused on improving in this area. But there are still those who do not feel the need to improve. And finally, for the sector as a whole, we believe that all charities should be encouraged to develop diversity action plans where they do not have one. They should focus on the short, medium and long term of how they will improve diversity at senior leadership level. The plan should look at reviewing recruitment processes, better communicating commitment to diversity, and progressing diversity talent internally. The idea that different must always mean not as good is simply false and must be tackled head on. For many of our clients, We take a same but different approach, sourcing the most diverse possible long list of candidates, but still ensuring the seniority, the skills and experiences are aligned. Sitting to my left and right are fine examples of individuals that may look different, but are equally as competent. Would we not agree? Good. All of this does not ignore the wider sector challenges. We know that there has been a 14.6% reduction in overall income within the sector since our last report. These are challenging times for charities, for many charities who are represented in this room. But our view is that diversity will help and will not be something that has adverse effects. When I was in my early 20s, I used to work in this place for a Member of Parliament. Now I have to say that I engaged with a lot of great people here, but if there was one thing that has never left me, it was that when it was all said and done, most of the people here were only human. They may have had privileged backgrounds, relatives who were in our history books, and were very likely to have studied at Oxbridge, but this did not mean that they had all of the answers or that the work they were doing could not have been done by anyone else. In fact, very often there was a feeling that if there was a little more diversity in the room, perhaps some wrong decisions could have been avoided. Diversity to me is about asking who is and who is not in the room when important decisions are being made. It's about picking the best people for the job, but making sure everyone has been given a chance to put themselves forward. Inclusion is about having a culture that accepts the need to include people, allowing different personalities to thrive whilst achieving organizational goals. Our ambition is to help make the third sector the most inclusive sector in our land. Our hope is that this report will help somehow to make this happen. Thank you.